Continue. Hello, everyone. We're just getting started here. Hello, everybody. Just give us a minute. Going through.
Do you have the items from the GitHub issue?
I have the GitHub issue open here.
Okay.
I think we can go through this. Go through GitHub issues. We'll talk immediately about releases, and then we can maybe have some time for demos. Go through GitHub issues and then do a full Q&A here.
Maybe close your terminal window.
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, this is bothering you?
Well, I think I half the real estate, but.
All right, so we see, let's see, anybody talking in the Q&A?
Hello.
Hello.
Anonymous.
Just wait a few more minutes here. Always let everybody give a couple minutes to trickle in. Looks like we got 24 people.
So I believe PowerShell Conference Asia is started today, right? Maybe.
Today, meaning like 18 hours ago, I think.
Oh, yeah, that's what I mean, like that whole time thing.
Yeah.
Yes, that would have been yesterday then.
It's probably already Saturday for them.
Saturday, what? Today's only Thursday here.
Oh, right. Then no, it's not starting for another, no, it's starting Friday. PSConf Asia. I think there was a pre-day. Hey, JB, how you doing? All right. So do you want to get into it about maybe talk a little bit about the release here, Steve? So yeah. Morning, everybody. We're going to get started, but yeah, go for it, Steve.
Well, just as an FYI, everyone, you're not. Do we show the room usually? I don't recall.
There's no room to show.
Sometimes we do, but yeah, we're.
Anyways, so we are expecting to have PowerShell 7 Preview 4 out later today. And there will be a blog post that basically just summarizes a bunch of the tweets, the GIFs that I post. And we'll continue working towards the GA. And I will mention in the blog post that, and I mentioned this before, I think on Twitter and also in other venues, that we are targeting a release candidate in December, and then we hope to have a general availability in January. Now we are taking dependency on .NET Core 3.1 LTS, so if they happen to move their dates again, that means that we will shift along with them. Good thing is, because we are telling ourselves that 3.1 LTS, that this release will be an LTS release. That means that you'll get support for at least 3 years. We'll continue to have servicing releases, 7.01, 7.02 as needed.
Oh, 3.1.1. That's what we need. .NET Core 3.1.1.
Yeah.
Questions in the.
Oh. Time zones, you think? Oh, let's. Do you want to? We can go through the questions now, I guess.
It's up to you.
So there's a statement more than a question. Time zones, yeah. We in the U.S. don't do well with time zones, even across our country. But Keith Hill has a question about the conditional operator and or. Yes, I expect that to show up in Preview 5. It didn't make it in time for Preview 4. Dispose. I'm trying to remember. I think someone in the community did. It might have been Joel who did the PR for dispose. So that didn't make it into Preview 4 for sure. There's a chance it could make it into Preview 5. Oh, my cat came into my room. There's a question on whether or not PowerShell Conference Asia 2019 is being streamed online. I don't believe it's being streamed, but I do believe they are probably recording all the videos and will be available after the conference sometime. Question about when does support end for 6.2? I believe following our previous modern lifecycle, 6.2 support will end 6 months after PowerShell 7 GA. So that would be roughly around July of next year. Question, are we recording? Yes, this is being recorded, right, Joey?
Yep.
Chris Bergmeister, the splatting. Yes, so he has a question about that. So there's an RC from Jason about the at more liberal splatting capability. I believe we approved the RC, but I don't think there's anyone currently assigned to do that work on my team. So if someone else wants to pick that up, we certainly would welcome that. Otherwise, it may not show up in, it probably won't show up in PowerShell 7.
Which one was that, Steve? I apologize.
Talking about the, I forget what Jason called it, but the at splatting, the more loose splatting.
Yeah, I think he called it.
You remember what it was called?
Oh man, it was like loose, but it was like yeah.
There's a better word. Let me look it up real quick.
Generalized splatting.
Yeah, that's what it was. Generalized splatting. So again, I guess one thing I'll just mention is anything that doesn't make it into 7, guess what? We're going to keep having releases. So hopefully it'll show up in the next one after that. Joel Salas says he's waiting for the RC to get approved so he can finish the code work. So yes, the committee will try to prioritize that for our next meeting. And we do meet on Mondays and Wednesdays.
You're talking, Joel's talking about the splatting?
No, he's talking about.
Oh, disposed. Okay.
Oh, Chris Bergmeister says, I assume he's referencing the generalized splatting as a PR open for it, so maybe there's a good chance. Literal splatting? No, it wasn't literal splatting. It was the generalized splatting.
Well, and this is, so I think this is a good segue into talking a little more about the RFCs, if that's okay.
Yeah, we can jump into that.
So, you know, I don't want to totally dive into it without having some stuff written down about how we would like to, you know, redo the RFC process or modify the RFC process. We've said this on the last community call. We recognize there's a bottleneck here, right? There's a bunch of RFCs that are being published. There's a bunch of PRs that are out that are based on RFCs that have not been reviewed yet. And, you know, one of the things that we're consistently still not seeing, and again, like we're kind of like we need to rewrite a bunch of our processes and be a little more explicit about these things, because I think that, you know, at some point we're just going to say we require them, and to be honest, we're kind of de facto requiring them at this point in terms of how we're evaluating PRs and RFCs from the committee perspective. But having examples, having consensus in issues are all critical things that people continue to seem to skip. We're getting PRs that are large refactors without any sort of behavioral description of what, you know, change is actually coming out of a thing. You know, we're seeing a lot of people sort of make very strong opinionated decisions in PRs in code before RFCs have been worked out, and honestly long before anyone else from the community has even sort of +1'd their proposal. So we're having people that are sort of like, you know, and I'm definitely not trying to single anybody out here. This is absolutely not, you know, about one person or about you know, one sort of pocket of PRs. But we realize that as this bottleneck builds, people get frustrated. They say, I don't see any reason why someone wouldn't want this behavior, despite the fact that very often there are people in issues saying, here's reasons why you might not want this behavior. And you know, another big one is, you know, and they're making these changes very often in risky areas of the code. We have big swaths of the code that is still you know, largely without automated testing, that is ripe for regression. It's very complicated areas of code. And I think the uber point that I want to land with everybody in the community is we want to slow down a little bit. And maybe you disagree with me here, Steve, or you think it should be rephrased a little bit. But in my opinion, we're basically, I think that a certain impatience, and this comes from us as well, by the way, like we feel the same pain in terms of getting PRs merged, in terms of talking about features. These things take time to discuss, to build consensus. I think that we shouldn't have this sort of internal timer anymore where we go, okay, once people have talked about it for so long, we have to make a decision one way or the other. Sometimes we should make the no decision and say we don't think we have enough evidence to know that this is a good idea. And so that's we're trying to balance being conservative with taking contributions, but it's very difficult. I've rambled for a good 10-15 minutes, but go ahead, Steve.
No, I think everything you said is correct. I mean, like, I don't necessarily think of it as slowing down as let's make sure we do the right thing, right, and have the right conversations. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that will take time, and that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I don't think slowing down as a general rule is something we need to do, but I think in many cases, and this has happened a couple of times throughout our releases where we're sort of bogged down and we're trying to get PRs through, and this is when we start, missing a breaking change or shipping a language feature that paints us into a new corner or whatever. So, these things are all, they all have wide-reaching implications, and what may seem very obvious to one person, to somebody that's been on the team for 5, 10, 15 years, that's been working in this code base, they'll turn around and go, oh, no, this whole area of the code, if you touch this, stuff's going to blow up. This is not, not a good idea, or needs significant review, or needs way more new tests, or whatever. And so, you're going to see that as people take a dependency on 7, we want it to remain a stable, backwards compatible platform as Windows PowerShell has been for 10 years. So I didn't capture any of that in the notes here as I talked. But I think you're going to see a blog post come out from us. We're trying to be very diligent within the committee and cross all our T's and dot all our I's and make sure that we have a sound process and set of principles around the project and the repository that we can have the discussion with people in the community when that's out about behavioral changes. Yeah, just stay tuned for that, and I'm hard at work on it, and we'll have something out to share soon. But we do recognize this is a top problem for me right now, is the fact that our repository has hit critical mass and we're not dealing with the level of feedback and contributions that are coming in.
So on the same topic, Chris does have a question on specifically for his pull request. Like, what happens if someone in the community has a specific concern and thinks that the RFC design needs to be re-reviewed by the committee? Like, what happens there? And I would say it's going to be case by case. Like, just because an individual may have a difference of opinion doesn't necessarily warrant that we need to go through a full review again.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we'd like to codify a little bit more, Christoph, is the sort of deputization of subject matter experts, right? So today we sort of subject matter experts or area owners or whatever we call them are essentially they're folks that focus heavily on the code review aspect in the PRs, and we'd like them to be more involved in issue discussions around sort of feature proposals. So again, like, we should not be getting to a point in the RFC where after the RFC has been accepted, someone is throwing a red flag on the field. Like, that should have been done. We want to have a pipeline where it should have been done between a community member throwing the flag and a subject matter expert inside of an issue. And then when an RFC is in draft and possibly a prototype is in draft, we'd like to have again, red flags get thrown, and the prototype and experimental features and that sort of thing should essentially help guide our decision on the RFC, and these things should be a little bit more codified. So by the time an RFC gets merged, we should feel like we have stronger evidence and more confidence that we can back this thing going forward. So, again, we'll sort of trickle out all the details of how that will work, but I think that's today. It's very case by case, and that's kind of what we're trying to get away from. Give you guys a little bit more sort of consistency or reliability in terms of what to expect.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I just want to reemphasize one thing that you said, which is the experimental features. Like, I hope everyone understands, like, the whole point of having the experimental features is that reading a spec can only get you so far to understand whether something is a good design from a user experience or not. So having it as an experimental feature means that people can actually use it, on their systems and provide that feedback and say, hey, it looked good in a spec, but when I actually do it, this isn't a good experience, or this turns out to be a great experience. That's why we want to have that capability to have that experimental feature.
Yeah, so Joel says, I'm pretty sure a fair few folks were saying the generalized splatting RFC probably needed a rework well before it was accepted, but I don't think there was, again, a real consensus on what would be a better way to implement. Yeah, and I think it's totally a fair point. I think, the issue there is that a lot of times, we're still dealing with a very high legacy burden. And I think, before I sort of threw the flag and said, hey, we're not doing this right. This doesn't feel like we're going about this process in the right way. We were just trying to get through a horrible backlog that kept growing, right? And we were like, okay, let's crank through some of these. Let's talk about this one. And it was very much in a, design by committee vacuum that we debated that thing and whiteboarded a bunch of stuff and came out and said, okay, this part of the generalized splatting we want, this part we don't want. This is, we want extension methods broken out in their own. And all of those decisions were sort of like, we were trying to get through the queue, essentially. So I think you're probably right. I think that there's probably some new concerns on the thing, but I do also, and this is, I don't want anyone to take this the wrong way, and correct me if my language isn't great here, Steve, but to some extent, as a governing body, we are going to make some executive design decisions. And sometimes there are folks in the community that feel very strongly that we're going about things in the wrong way. And I want to provide more transparency in terms of the sort of high level principles that we're resting on when we make those executive design decisions. But, we want to bring more people into the fold on the committee than we have. And we want to provide insight into how we kind of want folks on the committee to think. PowerShell is many different things to many different people. And we have to keep in mind this sort of set of audiences as we make these decisions. And you can think something is very, very stupid or that we are missing the point, but there's the committee is essentially people that have been building PowerShell for the last 10 years. Bruce and Jim alone, and everybody else. This is not just we're not just throwing stuff at a wall here. Like there's lots and lots and lots of thought and discussion that go into these things before decisions are made. So, yeah. Did you have anything to add there, Steve or Jim? I'm sort of.
No, I think that's good. So Michael B did have a question.
I wanted to give Jim a chance here because I did kind of paraphrase some of his words and I just saw him unmute himself.
Yeah, we want to be sure that we don't preclude behavior when we add behavior. And that is a much harder sort of thought process, much longer. The implications of some behavior, of new behaviors, is not always immediately understood. And that takes bake time, and we need to have it. And quite frankly, everyone should benefit from it. So it's one of the reasons why we're going through these exercises of rewriting our processes and being more explicit about how decisions are made. And we need to be sure that someone's pet feature doesn't become somebody else's pain point. And that can happen very easily.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
which actually goes to Thomas's question about the variable names ending in question mark. Thomas,
do you want to go ahead and take that one based on that?
Yeah, I mean, we're not going to do it. We're not going to take the breaking change.
Well, I think the point there is that however people are defining the variable names, we're retaining that behavior. So if they want question marks or they want white space, we're retaining that.
Yeah, and I could click through to this on the analysis, but I suspect that some of this was done in GitHub and Stack Overflow and maybe the corpus and things like that. But there are certain principles like this, like, hey, I can call a variable whatever the heck I want, and you get into lots of potentially dangerous stuff with operators. Operators are scary. They absolutely do paint you into a corner, right? Like there are behaviors that get precluded when you make operators, and there is, you make the parser stricter. There's all kinds of stuff that can happen. So it takes a lot of time to think through all that. But anyway, I think we've dwelled here long enough. You had one from Michael B. Steve.
Yeah, well, I don't quite exactly understand what he's asking for. He wants to ask if there's a Twitter handle to follow where all artists get called linked, meaning when they get published or posted, or when they get reviewed by committee. Or Michael, if you can provide a little more detail on what you're asking for, we can certainly provide such a thing.
Yeah, let us know, Michael. I see Sean's here talking about his blog post.
He's about the docs. So why don't we add that to the agenda for a little bit later?
Okay.
Because we do have some other stuff that the community want to talk about first.
Yep.
Okay, so Michael says yes when they get posted. So I will tell you what, I will try to make an effort on my Twitter to tweet whenever a new RC gets published that is looking for feedback.
I mean, to be honest, Michael, I think all you really need to do here.
I could actually write an Azure function in PowerShell to do this, so maybe I'll do that.
You just need to watch this repository for.
Yeah, I mean, it's not
watch the repo and look for new PRs. I mean, this is going to fall into your notifications when you go up to your bell, and you're going to all see here how much I use GitHub notifications. And this is why I'm always not always drowning under stuff. You can go hit the PowerShell RFC repo here on the left, and see these new PRs coming in. But there's ways to parse this all out. I also recommend like Tyler uses Octobox very heavily. It's a great notification manager. So anyway, but let's keep moving because we're already at 9:55, and I know we've got a lot of stuff. Keith made a point about case in point on future behaviors. Collection and rolling, while handy, can cause unexpected behavior. In retrospect, probably should have used an explicit operator for collection and rolling, for example, $process.id. I don't know that specific one, but or $processes.id, star ID.
Yeah.
Operator will enumerate the dot operator when used with a collection will enumerate the property that you mentioned on the right hand side.
Yeah, I use it quite a bit. I actually like it.
But the point is well taken. It's another one of those behaviors.
And Joel, you're speaking to the thing about the variable name. Yeah, I don't want to deep dive on the thing here, but I think one of the things that we've kind of come to, and that it feels like a lot of the community doesn't agree on, is that we should really try and be white space agnostic. And we've made some decisions in the recent times that have not been super white space agnostic, and a lot of us have not felt great about them.
Let's feel awful about it.
Also true. So we're not trying to introduce lots of requirements around how people use white space.
Like personally, I'd recommend don't use white space in your variable names. But it is allowed.
I don't mean in, no, I don't mean in variable names. I'm just saying all over the place. The fact that he was saying, Joel said here that, you know, hey, like you could still do this $var question mark space $$ if true.
Yes.
And I think what I'm trying to say here is, you know, that's requiring this white space in both of these cases. Like for a lot of our operators, we don't require white space.
Yes, this is a change that we have to make.
Like we don't like, and this is sort of the case with line continuation, and it's why we don't want to continue propagating line continuation across things beyond the pipe. We sort of made an exception with the pipe because there seemed to be a pretty strong groundswell around it. But saying, oh, if you've got a new line here, we do one thing, and if you don't have a new line here, we do another thing. That's not been something that PowerShell's really done or has codified in general practices ever before. So we don't want to make that a generalized thing. The generalized splatting feature was a question if the multi-line continuous RFC with enclosures would work better because it doesn't allow changing parameters into hash table when switching to multi-line. Yeah, again, not going down the road of more multi-line continuance. And we recognize why people that, and I think this is also a big thing that we have to talk about here, which is that contributors write a lot more long form scripts and modules than a lot of our users. There are a lot of people who are functioning purely on the terminal or who are writing very basic scripts or are not experts on the parser and how things work. And we need to provide dependability for them. There's, you know, PowerShell's been a Swiss Army knife for a very long time. Joel's saying, right, but if you're looking to be white space agnostic, you'd be changing the variable name requirements. Currently, if a variable is named $var, you cannot use a ternary operator without white space. This was one of the concerns with ternary operator. This is, you're right. Good clarification, and appreciate this, Joel. And this is, I think, the important thing to remember. He's saying, not saying it's wrong one way or the other, just clarifying. And at the end of the day, I think this is the philosophy most of us need to take, which is, if not all of us need to take. Like, we're trying to provide information. You know, there aren't a lot of perfectly right or wrong answers out there, and we have to, you know, make decisions in the absence of perfect information very often.
All right, should we move on?
We should, absolutely, yes. Did we want to go through some demos, or did we want to hit these topics in the
let's hit some of the topics real quick. So on the first one, I can talk to this. Like, there was some chatter on Twitter about the ternary operator. You know, it should have been $:: versus dash then dash else kind of thing. So I just want to provide a little bit of insight on how the committee discussed this. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail. However, one of the key things is this was not unanimous. It doesn't have to be. It's just a majority. And what we agreed upon is that people really asking for this are likely C# developers. So it makes sense that we make it easy for them to transition from C# to PowerShell script, which is why we adopted the current syntax. Keep in mind this is all opt-in, so if you don't want to use it, you don't have to use it. You can continue to use if else with braces, and all that will continue to work. So this is really kind of like syntactical sugar for that set of audience. And this was a highly voted up thing on GitHub, so we did want to provide some response whether we did it or not. And you know, it is an experimental feature, so people should try it out. And if it turns out that it doesn't work well, let us know. If it turns out it works great, let us know. I'm hoping this will be one that will be non-experimental by the time we hit release candidate. I don't know if there's anything you want to add from either Jim or Joey from the committee point of view on that one.
Nope.
I said nope. I think that covered it. Sorry.
Okay.
I was double muted. Hardware mute, software mute. Okay. Clarify the goals with regards to PowerShell 7 being able to fully replace Windows PowerShell 5.1 or not. So I can maybe speak to this one if you want, Jim.
Yeah.
Or Steve as well. So functionally, we want it to fully replace Windows PowerShell. Obviously, there's some stuff we've deprecated, snap-ins, workflows. You know, there's some aspects of, you know, the hosting model or GUIs that may never fully be there. or might have changed semantically, and those things are going to stay the way they are. But functionally, we believe that PowerShell 7 should be a working replacement for generalized PowerShell usage. Now, there's two parts to this question. Hey, when I've got it, is it going to run what I want? And then the other question is, where do I got it? Where do I have PowerShell 7? So with regards to the former, this is what we have lots and lots and lots of control over. And we've been working with module owners inside of Microsoft. We've been working with the .NET team to make sure that APIs that are popular within the PowerShell community are by and large available to them in .NET Core 3.0. We've worked, in Windows, marking these modules as compatible. And at some point, we want to probably work with the community to help some of the more popular modules become compatible. And in many, many cases, like they're drop-in replacements, right? We've seen lots of modules, quote unquote, just work as a result of the backwards compatibility work that's been done by everyone. Now, availability, location. You've heard me say in the past that PowerShell 7 at some point, in some form or another, without an ETA or any kind of thing beyond a TBD, will be quote unquote shipping in Windows. I want to be pretty clear that this could mean a lot of different things and that it's not been decided or worked out yet. We know that in some form or another, we need PowerShell to be more available to bootstrap scenarios on both clients and servers. We also know that Windows is supported for 5+5 years and .NET Core is not. We know that we cannot make feature upgrades to a infrastructure component like PowerShell or .NET Core inside of Windows within that 5+5 LTS timeframe. So there's just some challenges that have not been addressed yet. But in the meantime, we are doing things that get us closer and closer and closer to Windows. Like, I think, Steve, I don't want to call you out or make you have an ETA here, but you've been working on delivering PowerShell 7 into the store.
Yes.
No do ETA. You have an ETA there? No ETA, okay. We have PowerShell as a .NET Global tool, which allows us to install from NuGet.org with the .NET SDK available. We have a various set of Docker images for Windows where we are shipping inside of those images. So I certainly I don't want to say we're not shipping in Windows, but there was a reason I put many, many asterisks next to that on every slide deck I presented to say, don't know what this means, don't know when this is, don't know, how exactly we're going to do it. But the goal is that, folks can use 7 instead of 5. And is 5 going to go away? No, it's not going to go away, any faster than 2 is going away, which is to say that some stuff still depends on it, and there's edge cases, and it's probably going to sit there in Windows for a very, very, very long time. But we believe that the vast majority of 5 usage is going to be able to move to 7 and will enjoy some performance benefits, cross-platform benefits, a bunch of new features, parameters, etc. So, SSH remoting, all kinds of crazy good stuff, and that people will want to move to that now that it works with their scripts.
Let me just add on something, because I think there follow up on that question. There was some references to some Twitter discussion, and I think a lot of that has to do with kind of like edge cases. So we're definitely looking at the big modules within Windows and working with those teams. But like for example, I think Alexander noticed that there was a dynamic parameter with the cert provider that was no longer working with PowerShell Core, even though we have the cert provider in PowerShell Core. And when I looked into it, it turns out that was using a private API, which we simply just can't do as an open source project. So there's going to be, some set of these small things where we can't support it, even though it was part of Windows PowerShell itself. Another example might be like get WMI object. Like we have no intention of supporting that. That's considered deprecated. You should be using the sim commandlets instead. So
yeah, as a general rule, we are not allowed to call APIs that are undocumented between products. When Windows PowerShell shipped as part of Windows, it was part of Windows. It can use private APIs that ship in Windows. When we took PowerShell 7 out of Windows, we are now a new product. We have to use the same API set that everyone else has access to. there's nothing we can do about that. That is just reality. So is that a bummer? Yeah. Do we wish that maybe those private APIs were made public, and maybe if they were super duper important features, we could do that, or talk to those teams about it, or have some public API equivalents? Totally. But only, I think, when the bar is high enough for that feature to be really important. And, you know, I think 2 or 3 people on Twitter is it's not that groundswell that helps me go, you know, I mean, the private APIs are usually private for a reason, because they're difficult to maintain a stable surface area for the public.
All right.
Sorry, Steve, did you have another point there?
I'll do a quick, no, I think we're good there. I think I'll do a quick time check because I do want to cover DSC.
Yep.
I think Travis is on the call, hopefully. Yes, okay, so let's hold off on that for a second, Travis, not yet.
Okay.
I'm going to cover some smaller stuff that's in the issue. There's a question about the stats of PowerShell Get v3. So I want to kind of set some expectation here. You know, one of the philosophies that the committee has is that we want to make sure that things get tested well enough before we ship it with PowerShell. So in this case, my expectation is that we'll have a preview of PowerShell Get v3 sometime this calendar year. It won't ship with PowerShell 7. We're going to give it some time to bake on the gallery, so you would install it from the gallery. And then at some future time, it would be part of PowerShell 7 Plus. All right, so that's kind of where that is. And work is happening there. Let me see. I think we talked about some of the missing commandlets. A lot of them, again, are using private APIs. It makes it a very difficult technical legal problem. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I think we're okay there. So if we want, we can move on to DSC and the work that's happened.
There's one more release that we've done, and that's Script Analyzer is released.
Oh, yes. You want to talk about that, Jim, real quick?
Yeah, sure. We released 18.2 2 weeks ago, and then we found a pretty bad bug where we didn't have any validation on run space leakage. So we have now just recently released 1.18.3, which has fixed that bug. It's all been published to the gallery, so when you go to install Analyzer, you'll get the latest one anyway. But if you're if you've got scripts which explicitly install a specific release of Analyzer, make sure that it's the latest one.
All right. Darwin had a quick question about, can we alias get some instance and relevant params? So get some instance by design had very similar parameters and switches as get WMI object. So in many simple cases, you could actually just swap out get WMI object with get some instance. It should work just fine. But I don't think there's any intent to try to make one look like the other because they're not exactly the same. They're very similar. I mean, the big difference between the sim commands versus WMI commands is that the sim commands are interoperable with other SIMOMs that understand sim and WSMan. I don't know if I want to go into a ton of detail here, but for example, we can talk to Intel AMT, vPro, HP ILO, things like that, where the WMI commands can only talk to Windows.
All right, do we want to hop into DSC?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Maybe Travis can do a couple of demos.
Yeah, I'll start sharing my screen.
Yeah, and then I think one of us producers needs to click this thingy.
Yeah, while Travis is getting ready, Chris Bergmeister brings up a good point, which is PowerShell Core 6.1 will be out of support very soon, next week. And Script Analyzer is already dropping support for it, so yep.
Can everyone see Travis's desktop?
I can see it.
Okay, I've been working on getting Invoke DSC to work on PowerShell Core. I'm on a Mac right now, my personal machine actually. So I have some examples set up. This is using PowerShell Get, the PS module resource, and we can run the test method here and get the result. we try to make it behave similarly. So it says in desired state false, which means I don't have the module installed. Then we can go and run the get method similarly to the previous one. The big difference here is it's not using the local configuration manager. It's invoking this resource directly using PowerShell. We get this back and it says that ensure is absent, again indicating that it's actually absent. And then we should be able to go and say set, and it should install the module. This will take a minute, and I have a bad, but that should only be a warning. And now if we test again, it should actually be there. There is one other kind of side effect that happened because of this work. Configurations wouldn't compile before on the Mac. So now this resource here, this configuration, should actually compile. We've found quite a few bugs, and we'll try to get all of those documented. But it gives you a basis to start developing resources. I had one more demo to show you. The script resource actually works as well from the PS DSC resources module. The one in the PS desired state configuration does not exist in PowerShell core. So you have to use this one. Steve, do you have anything to add?
No, the only thing I'll just re-emphasize on what you're saying is after making this available, what we're really hoping is that the community will start developing more cross-platform DSC resources.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would also add that, this is the primary scenario around, why we went with Invoke DSC resources, sort of the first work here, very tactical, is so that, groups like Chef or Puppet, who've been involved in the RFC review as well, have an interface that they can call into in order to support DSC cross-platform, where they're sort of acting as the local configuration manager. So in the absence of our own for PS Core, if you're using these other products, you're able to still get to that DSC coverage that's sitting inside of module packages DSC resources.
The one other thing I wanted to add is this is an experimental feature. In the previews, it's currently enabled by default. Yeah.
You need to scroll up, Travis. I'm seeing the red box kind of cut off here.
I can't really scroll up anymore.
Oh, there you go.
It's
all good. I think we can see it now.
There is one other detail on here, get DSC resource, say name, PS module. To enable this, we had to add one detail here, which is this implementation detail. And this will only be there when you're running with the experimental feature enabled.
And Travis, it's correct to say that this will only work with script-based resources and class-based resources, right? Not binary resources.
Yeah, no binary resources, either either C# or native.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Travis.
No problem.
I'll go ahead and take back over here. Maybe there's just something weird about the box, because I think mine didn't look like this widescreen before. And you can actually see it down here on the right. Okay, so I guess it's just some bug. Okay. Yeah, so did you want to talk about this one about stuff being inaccessible, Steve? Like the sort of Microsoft.PowerShell.management and how, theoretically those undocumented API commandlets work in PowerShell core and are shipping in Windows, but we don't have a way to import them because we've got the namespace blockage.
So here, I guess the only thing I'll say is at this point we don't have a plan during PowerShell 7 timeframe to add those back. If you want to use them, you could actually use the Windows compatibility module to sideload the Windows PowerShell management or utility modules, and that can actually give you access to those old commandlets. So you do have a way to actually use them via the Windows compatibility module.
Okie doke. All right, did we have any more questions coming in on the live Q&A? Any of these?
Nothing new came in. We got about 14 minutes, so I do want to maybe give Sean some time as well.
Yep. Yep, and I think I actually need to add him as a presenter real quick.
Was there anything else on the agenda before we jump in?
I do not have anything else on the agenda. I don't know if Paul wanted to show off some for each parallel, or if anybody else had anything. I do see some other presenters here on the call, so folks, you know, speak up if you you want to do your demos today.
Yeah, I don't care. I can do it today or not do it today or do it some other time. But if there's not time to do it, just let me know and I can do something else.
Just maybe keep it 5 minutes or less.
That's not possible. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and share.
Yeah.
And Sean, are you now on the call?
Yes. Can you hear me?
So yeah, I think we'll just work through Paul's code here real quick, and then I just wanted to make sure you were on here. So we'll give you some time here to talk about the blog post.
Okay.
So can people see the screen?
No.
No, you need to. So you need to share first, and then I have to go and add it as a live share thing. So I'm not seeing your share come through yet.
How about now?
It's when Travis did it, it just popped right in.
So let's see, click on the share. Oh, something is being shared in the live event right now. Anything you share will replace. I say fine, and I click on share.
And you're doing screen or a specific application?
Screen.
Okay.
Oh, I have to click the screen. Oh, I see down here. How about now?
There we go.
Oh, okay.
So now this is theoretically a thing for me to click on, but I don't see it. You clicked your thing again?
I can do it again.
Someone else has
Click
started
share.
sharing.
Screen one.
There we go. That's
Okay.
it. Boom.
Yep, see it.
Okay. So yeah, so real quickly, so this is not really a new experimental feature. It is an experimental feature. It came out a few weeks ago. So I don't know. I think most people maybe are aware of it. So I'll just do a quick demo of it. But basically what it is, it's as highlighted here, it's a new parameter set for the for each commandlet. And it's intended to invoke the script block that's specified in the parallel parameter. Basically in parallel concurrent using PowerShell, script block concurrency APIs. So the idea is to get some parallelism with a for each object. So instead of having each of the piped in objects being processed in serial, which is how it is normally, it processes it in parallel. So I think people understand that. Another big thing I guess I should mention is that, again, this is not any new way to execute scripts in parallel. It's using what's already exists in PowerShell. It's just basically you're wrapping it up into a new parameter set for each commandlet. The big thing is that it does have a throttle limit now, something that start job does not. So the idea is that you can limit how many script blocks are running at a time. The other thing, which is kind of big, is that it has an as job switch. So the idea is that when you run the for each object in parallel, you get a job object back. So it's basically kind of takes over where thread job starts. Then once you get a job back, you can use it, to monitor the state of the scripts being run in parallel and get output and that sort of thing. So just for an example, what I've done here, just to kind of show how the throttle limit works, is on this screen, I've actually connected to this process here using enter PS host process. So what I'm doing is I'm just running a simple script that just basically gets the run space count, so you can kind of see what's going on when you run for each parallel. And then what I'm going to do here for each parallel, I'm just going to run this very simple script. And what it is I'm just piping integers 1 to 20, and then they're going to be processed in parallel, and basically just doing a string evaluation after a sleep. And then I'm setting a throttle limit to 5. So what that means is that the input objects will be batched 5 at a time. And so, whoops. When you run it, we look over here, we see that the count of run spaces has jumped up by 5. And we see again here that they're being batched basically 5 at a time. So every 5 seconds, the current batch completes and then the next batch starts. And then you can see here that, yeah, so we're just basically 5 run spaces were created. Now that everything's done, they've been cleaned up and we're back to the original run space count. And then the last thing I wanted to show real quickly is you can also do it as a job. Then if you look at the job, and if you look at the child jobs, kind of see the same sort of thing here. We got everything's being batched by 5. And then once the batch is done, then the next batch gets running. And once all the child jobs are done, then you can use the job commandlets wait job and receive job to get the outputs from the for each parallel output. So that's really all I wanted to do. There's some other things I could demonstrate that are a little more realistic, like getting log entries. I won't do it. You can do it with and without parallel. In this case, if you use a parallel runs almost twice as fast, just due to the fact that you have disk access and things going on that you can actually take advantage of the fact and have things run quicker if they're done in parallel. So then I'll just leave it at that, unless anybody has any questions.
Looks good. The only thing I'll mention is that Paul has a great blog post on the PowerShell blog about this already, so definitely take a look at that if you haven't already.
Awesome. In progress of unmuting
Sean?
and all that. Yep, Sean, I'm gonna. Oh, we don't need you to present here, so I will go ahead and share again, and just go ahead and start talking about your blog post, Sean. Sean, you there? Unmute maybe.
It helps if I unmute.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah, I just wanted to set some context behind the blog post. As several people have noticed and created issues about the updatable help for version 5.1 and older hasn't been updated in quite some time. We are maintaining those documents, and the web pages that get published have the updated information, but the help content that update help gets hasn't changed. The biggest issue around that is internal processes that we're trying to fix, but it's the old way that we hosted the updatable help content is pretty much a manual process, and the new way is automated and uses Azure Blob Storage, but we haven't been given the green light to move that content to Azure Blob Storage yet. With that said, the purpose of this blog post is to show you how from the source in the docs repo, you can build the updatable help and install it yourself. So hopefully that's a stopgap for those of you who want updated help on your down level versions.
Yeah, so one of the things, no, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
Awesome. To manually update your console versions. So this is awesome. I saw some stuff on Twitter in particular. You know, Joel Bennett had a tweet around, you know, hey, like, is the fact that this process is manual really the only thing that's blocking you know, updatable help, and it would provide so much benefit, and it seems like worthwhile to do that manual process. I want to be very clear that when we say it's a manual process, it's not just the manualness of it that makes the process so horrific. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of clicks that need to happen for each update, and across multiple services, and frankly, potentially with some domain knowledge that no one left on the team has anymore. And these are, you know, the reason we want to work this pipeline process, and you know, it's taken us much longer than we would have liked to get funding on, you know, building this sort of company-wide pipeline around updatable help. We still have designs for it. We're still floating it. Right now, it's just more of a timing and sequencing problem than anything. We have to work with a number of other teams like docs.microsoft.com, and you know, we you know, have this PowerShell 7 work that's ongoing. So you know, it's it's a heavy thing, but I recognize that there's a ton of value, not just in having a pipeline for our own help for 3, 4, and 5 and the quote-unquote inbox, you know, PowerShell team modules, but also for the Windows PowerShell modules that are owned by other teams across the company, or for the Office modules, or the Azure modules. So for all of these, we would like to have a single pipeline, and at some point we will get there. But this is, as Sean said, a stopgap, and you know, want to make sure that you have the ability to do this. So check out his blog post.
I will also add that I'm in the process of archiving the content for version 3, 4, and 5.0. It'll be moved to the docs.microsoft.com/previous versions URL path. So it'll still be available online, but it won't show up in search. We will link to it from the main pages and such, but at the point where it gets moved to this archive location, it'll become static. We won't plan on doing any updates to it.
Thank you, Sean. All right, I know we were basically at time. I apologize, Tyler. This is, I know he wanted to show some remote development. I think we're gonna run out of time here, so we'll have to do that next time. But we had one more question from Edward with the for each in parallel function. What is the behavior during an exception? I don't actually know the answer to that question. Did Paul or Steve? Do you know the answer?
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. You get a non-terminating PS task exception, so you can handle it that way. Or if you do the as job, then it's just normally handled as a failed state as a job. So you have ways to handle that. I think we're out of time, so you want to wrap up? Anything else?
Yeah, thank you everybody for joining. This was great. A ton of great questions. We appreciate the pressure and everything, and we appreciate everyone's patience on you know, some of these problems that we recognize are big problems and that just take time to work through. So please continue being patient with us. Thank you for everything you guys do on the contribution front and the feedback front. You know, it's we didn't get a chance to go over numbers here, but the growth of PowerShell in the last 2 or 3 months, PowerShell Core specifically, has been pretty explosive. You know, we're up to over 21 million starts a month, which I think is about 35% up from last month, which was already a great month. So, you know, we're on an uptrend here. You know, these decisions pay dividends over time, and so just you know, thank you. So, everybody have a great week. Everybody that's at PSConf Asia, have a great time. And we will see you next month.
Yep. Bye.
Bye, everyone.